We all feel it sometimes, don't we? That little pull to look into the darkness, maybe understand the edges of human behavior. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
Today, we're taking this stack of source material, really digging into it, to unpack the psychology of serial killers. We'll trace how investigations had to evolve because of them and try to figure out why we, as a society, are just so captivated by extreme evil.
Yeah, it's an important task. We want to move past just the shocking headlines and synthesize what the research tells us about, well, the mix of trauma, underlying pathology, maybe even neurological factors that contribute to serial homicide,
Right.
and also look at how science is trying to, understand and ideally stop these crimes.
And we have to start with something pretty startling from the sources,
Yeah.
that geographic point. As of early 2023, the U.S. is home to something like 64% of the world's documented serial killers.
64%. It's a huge number.
That is staggering. Why? What's going on there?
Well, it jumps right out, doesn't it? The research suggests it's not that the underlying psychology is unique to America, but certain, structural and cultural elements might play a role.
Like what?
Things like high social mobility. It can, unfortunately, make it easier for someone to move, evade local police, find new victims, without the same level of community oversight you might see elsewhere.
Okay, so anonymity helps.
Exactly. Combine that with a highly individualistic culture, maybe sometimes leading to fragmented social support systems, and then you add complex state-to-state jurisdictional challenges for law enforcement.
Right, crossing state lines complicates things enormously.
It does, and it creates an environment where these patterns can sometimes go undetected or cases remain unsolved for a very long time.
It makes the horror feel less like just an individual failing and more, well, systemic in some ways.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift from the system to the individuals then. We're talking about names that unfortunately most people recognize. Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy.
Harold Shipman in the UK, Aileen Wuornos, the Zodiac Killer. The list goes on.
And when you look at the sources comparing these figures, their methods might differ wildly, but are there core psychological traits that keep showing up?
Oh, absolutely. Chillingly consistent, actually. The absolute foundation seems to be a profound lack of empathy and remorse.
Not just indifference, but a real void.
Exactly. It's an emotional detachment that lets them view people as objects, effectively removing any moral speed bumps to committing repeated acts of violence.
So if that lack of empathy clears the path, what's the engine? What drives the repetition?
Across the board, it seems to be an overwhelming need for control and dominance. Murder becomes the ultimate expression of power for them.
How so?
Whether it's the meticulous planning of someone like Bundy or the public terror campaigns like the Zodiac, the core goal is often about asserting absolute life and death power. It reinforces their sense of superiority.
And that links directly to psychopathy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The research suggests, what, maybe 15% to 25% of serial killers fit the criteria. We hear about the dark triad narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy.
That's right. Those traits combine into something particularly dangerous. Often superficial charm, callousness, and a real talent for manipulation.
Like Ted Bundy.
Bundy's a classic example. He wasn't hiding in the shadows initially, law student involved in politics. He used that charisma, that apparent normality as a tool to lure victims.
Yeah.
He manipulated perceptions right to the very end.
It's terrifying. And it forces that nature versus nurture question. Let's start with nurture. The sources really emphasize early childhood trauma.
Yes, consistently. Severe abuse, neglect, profound instability in childhood. These factors appear again and again. They seem to act as a kind of psychological catalyst.
It's not just a correlation, it's a strong indicator.
It seems to be.
Hmm.
You look at someone like Aileen Wuornos, horrific abuse, abandonment, or the kind of extreme emotional isolation and punitive upbringing reported for Ed Gein or Dahmer.
What does that do psychologically?
Well, the thinking is it teaches a child that the world is hostile, unpredictable, maybe even meaningless. And that power, often through control or even inflicting pain, is the only way to navigate it or feel safe.
Okay, so that's the potential environmental programming, the software issue. What about nature, the hardware? What does neurocriminology tell us about their brains?
It's a developing field, but studies using neuroimaging often point to functional differences in key brain areas.
Which areas are we talking about?
Primarily the prefrontal cortex. That's crucial for things like impulse control, planning, moral reasoning. It often shows reduced activity.
The brain's CEO is less active.
In a way, yes. And then there's the amygdala, which is central to processing emotions, especially fear. Studies sometimes find structural differences there too, maybe reduced volume.
And it's the connection between them that matters, right? The frontal limbic
Yeah,
connectivity.
that connection is vital.
Yeah.
You can think of the limbic system, including the amygdala, as the emotional gas pedal driving fear, anger, excitement.
Okay.
And the prefrontal cortex is the brake and the steering wheel, regulating those impulses based on social rules and consequences. If that connection, that wiring, is weak.
The gas pedal is floored, but the brakes are weak.
Precisely. The emotional signals don't seem to get integrated properly with rational thought and moral consideration. They might know something is wrong on an intellectual level, but they lack that deep internal emotional stop sign.
That's a chilling way to think about it. If that's the deep-seated pathology, let's look earlier. Are there childhood warning signs? This brings us to the McDonald triad, which is, well, it's somewhat controversial, isn't it?
It is controversial, mainly because these behaviors, chronic bedwetting past age 5, fire starting, and animal cruelty, certainly don't guarantee future violence on their own. Many kids exhibit one without ever becoming violent.
Right. It's not predictive in isolation.
No. But when these three appear together, particularly with intensity or persistence, the psychological interpretation is relevant to understanding the developmental path seen in some serial killer profiles.
Okay, so let's break them down. Animal cruelty seems like the most direct red flag.
It's often seen that way because it demonstrates an early lack of empathy and a willingness to exert power over a defenseless being. It's disturbing, but you see it in the histories: Ed Kemper, Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. It's sometimes described as a kind of practice.
Horrifying. And fire starting. Is that just about destruction?
It's often interpreted as being about control, too. A very visual, very total kind of control. It can stem from feelings of powerlessness or rage, perhaps linked back to that early trauma or neglect. Watching something utterly consumed by flames can be a powerful, if disturbing, affirmation of control.
Which links back to that core motive of dominance we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
This whole effort to spot patterns, to understand the behavior, really pushed law enforcement to evolve. You had the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, BSU, in the 70s doing groundbreaking work.
Absolutely. They started systematically interviewing incarcerated killers, people like Bundy, Gacy, trying to build psychological profiles, developing concepts like the organized versus disorganized typology. It changed how police approach these seemingly motiveless crimes.
But profiling, while influential, has its limits. The real revolution in solving these cases came later, with science.
Without a doubt, DNA analysis has been transformative. The ability to link suspects to crime scenes with objective physical evidence, it's a complete game changer.
And the prime example everyone points to is the Golden State Killer.
Joseph James D'Angelo. Right. After decades, 40 years, it wasn't a profile that caught him. It was forensic genealogy, using DNA databases like CODIS, combined with public genealogy sites. That cracked a case that had gone cold for generations.
And alongside DNA, there's the digital trail now.
Digital forensics, yeah. Cell phone records, GPS data, social media, internet searches. It provides investigators with incredibly detailed timelines, movements, connections between people and places that were unimaginable even 20 years ago. It can link crimes across huge distances.
But we need to circle back to profiling for a second. As valuable as the BSU's work was and is as an investigative tool, it has faced criticism, right, about its scientific basis.
Yes, that's a crucial point. While profiling can be incredibly helpful for, say, narrowing down suspect pools or suggesting interview strategies, it's been criticized for lacking the rigorous scientific validation of something like DNA.
It's more interpretive, more subjective.
It can be, yes. It relies heavily on inference and pattern recognition based on past cases, which isn't the same as objective, testable proof. That's why it's best viewed as an adjunct tool, something used alongside hard forensic evidence, not as a definitive identifier on its own.
So why does it persist so strongly then? The whole organized-disorganized idea is everywhere in pop culture and even still in training.
Well, partly because it provides a useful narrative structure. For investigators facing chaotic crime scenes, it offers a framework, a way to start thinking about the offender's potential characteristics, their lifestyle, maybe where to look next.
It helps organize the investigation itself.
Exactly. But again, it's a guide, not gospel. Courts are rightly cautious about its use as direct evidence of guilt. It assesses behavior, not identity.
That makes sense. It's finding that balance between the art of investigation and the hard science. Okay, let's pivot. We've talked about the killers, the investigation. Now let's look at us, the audience. Why are we so fascinated by this? Why the endless stream of documentaries, podcasts, books?
It's a great question, and psychology has a few ideas. One major driver is likely the desire for control.
How does watching something about chaos give us control?
By examining the crime, following the investigation, seeing justice, hopefully done, we create a kind of psychological preparedness kit. It makes the scary, unpredictable parts of the world feel a little more understandable, maybe even manageable. We learn the rules of the horror, so to speak.
Okay, I see. And then there's the thrill aspect, right? The safe fear.
Engaging with frightening stories triggers our natural fear response, adrenaline, dopamine, but in a controlled environment. We get the excitement, the physiological arousal, without any actual danger. We're safe on our couch.
It's like riding a roller coaster.
A very dark roller coaster, yes. And beneath that, there's probably a deeper, maybe even primal curiosity about evil. We have this need to understand the absolute extremes of human behavior, perhaps to better define our own moral boundaries. Where is the line? And what happens when someone crosses it so catastrophically?
But the way media covers it,
Yeah.
that's where it gets complicated ethically. You see these dramatizations, especially focusing on killers who were maybe charismatic, like Bundy,
Yeah.
or had complex psychological profiles like Dahmer. There's a real risk of glamorization, isn't there?
A huge risk. They can inadvertently turn these individuals into dark cultural icons. The focus often shifts heavily onto their personality, their struggles, their fascinating mind.
And what's the problem with that focus?
Well, two main things. First, it often oversimplifies incredibly complex psychology and the devastating impact of their actions. It can turn real horror into sensationalized entertainment. But maybe more importantly, this intense focus on the killer means the victims get overlooked. Their stories, their lives, their humanity, it all gets overshadowed. They risk being remembered only for how they died, defined solely by the actions of their killer.
We end up analyzing the perpetrator's puzzle instead of remembering the human cost.
Precisely. It's a difficult balance to strike.
It really is. So, wrapping this up, we've delved into these consistent patterns. The trauma, the need for control, and the killer's psychology. We've seen how forensics like DNA revolutionized solving these cases, while profiling remains a useful, if subjective, tool. And we've touched on why we, the public, are so drawn to these dark narratives.
And ultimately, trying to understand the why, the deep motivations and contributing factors isn't just academic. It's crucial for informing psychological profiling, for developing preventative strategies, maybe even for finding ways to intervene before profound vulnerability turns into irreversible violence.
Okay, so as we finish this deep dive, here's a final thought to leave you with, drawn from the source research itself. Evolutionary psychology might suggest our interest in serial killers stems from a survival instinct needing to understand threats.
Understanding the predator.
Right. But what does it tell us when the research also documents that the vast majority of ordinary people, something like 91% of men and 84% of women, report having had at least one vivid homicidal fantasy at some point in their lives? What does that say about the line, maybe the very thin line, between the normal mind and the extreme evil we find so morbidly fascinating?